Good evening, Zimbabwe. Tonight, the country's political theater has turned into a full-blown thriller as Vice President Constantino Chiwenga's long-whispered dossier has finally leaked and its tremors are shaking the nation from Munumutapa to the exchange floors in Victoria Falls. The dossier, described by insiders as explosive beyond repair, was meant to be discussed quietly within the Politburo. Instead, it has detonated in public, exposing what it calls the systematic corruption, manipulation, and looting by a small circle of oligarchs surrounding President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The timing could not have been worse for the ruling party. The ZANU-PF annual conference scheduled for Mutare has been hastily moved to Harare after the leak, in what sources say was an attempt to keep the warring generals apart, with speculation swirling that either Chiwenga or Mnangagwa was being strategically prevented from attending. The dossier, which reportedly includes evidence of state capture through gold deals, fuel cartels, and parastatal kickbacks, has not only damaged the president's credibility but also lifted the veil on the rotting inner core of the state. For a government that has spent years branding itself as a second republic, this document may as well be its obituary. As the political storm brews, the economy finds itself walking on eggshells. Zimbabwe's largest independent asset manager, Imara Asset Management, has warned the government not to abandon the US dollar by 2030, saying such a move would jeopardize the fragile stability that has finally returned to the economy. Imara's Shelton Svanda said bluntly that the government should not rock the boat, noting that the free use of the dollar, which now accounts for 85% of all transactions, has given companies and citizens the breathing room to plan, trade, and survive. After years of inflation nightmares, the ZiG currency, introduced in April 2024, has only lost 3% against the dollar, a minor miracle in Zimbabwe's history of monetary disasters. But with $23.3 billion in debt, or $21 billion in debt, depending on whom you believe, between the World Bank and our Treasury, and the Treasury being forced to cut spending, the stability is more illusion than foundation. The message from Imara was simple: leave the dollar alone, or watch the miracle vanish like every other government promise. But as we know, when has the Reserve Bank and the government listened to anything? When they introduced the ZiG, the public actually begged them not to introduce it until they were serious about introducing it. They were not. Passports are still being paid in foreign currency. Taxes are still being paid in foreign currency. The ZiG has not reached 85% of the people in Zimbabwe. They have not seen it. It hasn't been into their wallets. So if the government listens to Imara now, it will be another miracle. In the energy sector, Zimbabwe's electricity regulator ZERA says it has had enough of ghost projects and shady deals. Beginning in 2026, power projects will only be approved through competitive bidding. ZERA Chief Executive Eddington Mazambani said the new system will promote transparency and stop companies from submitting speculative proposals they never intend to build. The reform comes as government prepares to liberalize the power market next year, allowing private companies to sell electricity directly to consumers, a long overdue step that could finally bring competition, investment, and maybe a few working light bulbs to Zimbabwean homes. While the country debates power and politics, another diplomatic storm is brewing. The Chinese embassy in Harare has issued a rare warning to its citizens working in Zimbabwe, urging them to obey local laws and stop activities that have angered communities, including illegal mining, unsafe working conditions, and environmental damage. The statement follows several ugly incidents, such as the shooting of a Zimbabwean worker by a Chinese supervisor in Mutoko. The embassy urged Chinese businesses to practice transparency, respect communities, and avoid reckless behavior. It's an unusually blunt reminder from Beijing, signaling frustration that its nationals are tarnishing China's image in Zimbabwe. Maybe with a call from their own country, and they do fear their own country, the Chinese might change their ways. Meanwhile, not all the news is bleak. The Victoria Falls Stock Exchange has hit an all-time record high of $1.85 billion as the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange Holdings reported a 126% jump in profit before tax for the third quarter of 2025. The group credits tighter cost control, higher gold prices, and steady investor confidence. It's a bright spot in an otherwise dim economic landscape, though foreign investors remain cautious with participation dipping to just 17%. Still, the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange's rise shows that even in chaos, Zimbabwe's business class continues to find ways to profit from the madness. Across the border, tragedy struck in South Africa's Limpopo province, where a cross-border DNC bus carrying mostly Zimbabweans and Malawians plunged into an embankment, killing 49 passengers, including women and children. President Mnangagwa has expressed his condolences and ordered the government to cover repatriation, hospital, and funeral costs for the victims. President Cyril Ramaphosa also extended sympathy to Zimbabwe and Malawi, calling for greater cooperation across the region on road safety. DNC coaches, the company involved, apologized to the families, calling the crash a national disaster. Back home, the courts have made headlines again after Dr. Selemani Saidi, the Harare doctor who refused to authorize blood transfusions on religious grounds, lost his constitutional challenge to overturn his professional ban. Justice Samuel Deme ruled that Saidi's application was premature because he had not exhausted appeal channels under the Health Professionals Act. Saidi, represented by Professor Love Momaduku, had argued that his beliefs about the sanctity of blood were protected under freedom of conscience, but the court disagreed. He remains barred from general medical practice until he follows due process. On the global stage, US President Donald Trump has declared the Gaza war officially over after Hamas released the last Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian detainees. Speaking in Israel's parliament, Trump said the skies are calm, the guns are silent, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace. He later co-hosted a peace summit in Egypt with over 20 world leaders to discuss Gaza's reconstruction and the region's future. For now, the guns have gone quiet, but the Middle East remains a minefield of mistrust and the reconstruction promises. And finally, in sports, the Warriors have once again broken national hearts, falling 1-0 to Lesotho in their World Cup qualifier at Peter Mokaba Stadium. An injury time goal by Hlombo Kalake sealed Zimbabwe's fate, leaving the team without a single victory in the qualifiers. Coach Michael Nice says the loss will serve as preparation for AFCON later this year, though fans are running out of patience with preparations. Meanwhile, history was made elsewhere in Africa as Cape Verde a small island nation of just over 500,000 people, qualified for the 2026 World Cup after beating Eswatini 3-0. The Blue Sharks are now the second smallest country ever to reach the tournament, proving that size is no barrier to ambition. And that's your Zimwaves TV evening news. A day that began with whispers of dossier ends with headlines of exposure, warnings, and grief from the corridors of power to the dark highways of Limpopo. The story of Zimbabwe remains one of resilience and revelation. Stay with Zimwaves TV, where truth is not whispered in corners. It's broadcast loud and clear. Subscribe now, because in this country, news doesn't break, it explodes.